and welcome back to another DFS Army Bold Calls Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Kevin Allen. I am your host. I've got the season-long fantasy football GOAT himself, season-long Says on the line. What's up, Says?
Hey now, buddy. We're back and doing it again. Fantasy football almost here. Ready to rock.
I'm excited for this one. I feel like we've been waiting for this particular broadcast for a while. And the reason is our focus today is going to be on commissioner rules for radicals. Okay? And what we're talking about is what's more annoying than having a commissioner who's stuck in the past? You're in a fucking non-PPR 10-team
touchdown only league.
Well, I mean that's even taking it too far, but fantasy football, season-long fantasy football continues to evolve year after year. There are things we've learned over the course of the past 20 years of doing this. Some truths that we hold to be self-evident, that certain positions have scarcity and other positions do not, that certain approaches to commissionering your league are better than others. So that's going to be what we talk about today. And I know Says that you're very passionate about this.
Oh, yes. Topic. Oh, yes. Well, you know what it is? It's that all things evolve. Think about just, all technology gets swallowed up by new technology. You started off with just basic computing, and AOL revolutionized email. And then Yahoo revolutionized email and internet searching. And then eventually Google ate up Yahoo. So it does happen, and the same is true for fantasy football. We start off with this basic game that we all love today, and it evolves. And I think that the key is to get ahead of it and experiment with various rule tweaks and changes. Some of them will stick, some of them may not.
You just gave me a thought when you mentioned AOL here. And before we get too deep into this, we're going to start with some basic rules that everybody should have. And the AOL example is something I'm going to use right now, and I'm about to lose my shit. Okay, if you're a commissioner or you're in a league with a commissioner who is on using a service that costs money every year, what the fuck is wrong with you? Okay, 25 years ago, if you wanted an AOL account, you had to rent it for $15 a month. Okay, and some motherfuckers kept that shit for a year. They're still paying $15 a month now. Okay, AOL's like, oh, we'll do you a favor. We reduced it to $3.99. If you're paying for your fucking email, you're an asshole. Okay, and guess what? If you're paying for your fantasy football service, you're an asshole.
Well, how do you answer to those that some of the services, the free version is riddled with ads, it's riddled with commercials. There are a lot of free options available. Some of the softwares also don't allow you to make customizable changes, but that was true 3 years ago. There is a couple of free services now that really allow full customization. So what you're saying is true in 2019. It may not have been true in 2017.
I don't even buy that. There have been, but yes, 2019, there are now, you've had Yahoo that's been free for like 15 years already. It's not the best, but it's free. You had ESPN free forever. Do they hammer you with their fucking bullshit analysts constantly on their app? Sure, but at least it's free and it's pretty good. And now you have new apps, and you and I are big fans of Sleeper as one of them, that give you all the power in the world, incredible news, chat features. It's all fucking free. Why would you pay $150 for CBS fantasy football? Okay, CBS invented it. I get it. They made a lot of fucking money off of it in the beginning, but you have to be a moron to pay for that today. So that's not even rules for radicals. That's rules for don't be a fucking moron. Don't pay for your league. Apply the $150 towards prize pool.
And specifically, this is a free commercial for the Sleeper app. We're big advocates of it. Sleeper app is a new fantasy football software application that is doing everything.
Wait, hold up. Could we get them as a sponsor of this podcast before we start giving?
Yeah, I was just going to say that that's an example of somewhere you can go that doesn't have all the ads and doesn't have all of forced video content that you must look at. But there's others like it as well. I mean, we can go through the whole list, but that one is what comes to mind.
All right, just a very simple, because I needed to rant because I'm in a league with a commissioner who refuses to get off of fucking CBS, and we pay them $150 a year.
Yeah, that's bad. I mean, that could be like an extra prize for like fourth place. The loser, if you're in a league where you're charging $200-300 to get in, and or even like a $50 league, that extra money could be used for another prize.
All right, so let's Pat. That's my personal rant, but let's get into some serious rules. Let's get into the basics first. Now, I'm going to throw some things out there that I think are basic rules that every fantasy football league should have. And then we'll get into some really cool, things that you see on like the high stakes fantasy leagues that really should probably be brought into your friends and family league as well. But I would say at this point, PPR is a must. No, I mean, is there any reason not to have a PPR league?
Well, I'm for PPR leagues, and that's another thing. When people talk about the difference, they say PPR or standard. I don't even accept that standard is non-PPR. Standard now is become PPR. Most leagues I know of are PPR leagues. So when people say standard, I say, oh, you mean PPR? They said, no, I mean non-PPR. To me, I say that's traditional leagues, old school leagues. So I believe
those are fucking lame leagues.
Well,
don't invite me to your league if it's not a PPR league.
Right. And I'm not into this half PPR thing either. Half PPR is like a half measure. Let's go halfway, not all the way. And I know that, and the reason we think that, let's just give it our reason. The reason that we think PPR is better is because it makes the player pool more relevant. Now, I know that so more players that normally wouldn't be usable in week-to-week fantasy with non-PPR, mostly receivers that catch short passes, become relevant and usable in your third receiver spot or your second flex spot. And I know that people that are against PPR say, well, if your running back catches a pass and gets tackled for a 1-yard loss, you're still gaining points, meaning you'd get a full point for the catch, a negative 0.1 points for the yardage loss. So that's still a positive 0.9 points. Why should your running back get positive points for a negative play? Now I understand that rationale, but there are I'm saying, and
the fucking ball.
Correct. That is a skill. Catching the football is a skill. But there are ways to teach. Again, I don't mean to keep doing a commercial for Sleeper, but there's so many others. My fantasy league that have all these customizable applications where you can tier the PPR, meaning that running backs don't get a full point for PPR, or other positions, which we're going to talk about, get more than a full point, and we'll get into that mostly. So we think that catching should be rewarded with some form of points, mostly just to make more of the player pool relevant.
Let me break it down from a daily fantasy sports point of view. The reason that DraftKings does full PPR is because they try to increase the skill versus luck component on that site versus a site like FanDuel, which does half-point PPR. And you might say, well, what the fuck are you talking about? The touchdown is not a predictable stat from week to week. It's very volatile. You can have the greatest wide receiver in the world on your team. Julio Jones went like 2 seasons without scoring a fucking touchdown, but the guy would put up 200 yards and 14 receptions. So PPR is a higher skilled approach to scoring fantasy points. It just is. And there's a reason why, again, on the DFS side, DraftKings doesn't and FanDuel does not. FanDuel wants to appeal a little bit more.
Well, they use half PPR, right?
Yeah, I mean, even that, but even half is a big difference between that and full. And again, it's designed to emphasize the unpredictable event of the touchdown and de-emphasize or de-emphasize your ability to research sharp knowledge of the sport. So PPR is for sharper players, but in general, at this point, tell your fucking commissioner it should be a PPR league. Now here's another one. Waivers. Okay? If you're still using waiver priority in your fantasy league, you're doing it wrong. Now, Alan, tell me why waiver priority, which was like invented by Yahoo back in 2001, is a worse system than FOB, which is now the general accepted approach to doing a fantasy football league. Explain this to me.
Okay. So going back to when fantasy started, it was certainly an imperfect game and it's evolved over the years. So for those of you who've been playing in fantasy for multiple years and you still may be in an old school waivers league where the way you pick up free agents is the reverse order of the draft order, meaning if you have the first overall pick, that means you would have the last priority on your waiver wire. And that doesn't really make any sense. Sometimes with the 12th pick, you get and you have the first priority, you may still have the best player on the board. So what a fab
and by
system.
the way, and then again, you're dicking around all season. I just want to throw this in. You're dicking around all season with trying to get to the number one priority. And should I take a player here? And you're fucking around. And of course, by the time you get up to number one, it's not the week when somebody good is available on your priority. Like, oh man, but now I need this guy. So basically, there's a lot of luck involved, and you're dicking around with am I number one this week? Am I number three? Am I number? Fuck that.
Yeah. I'm still in one league that does it that way, and I kind of like just being in like one league like that. It's kind of fun. Just like I almost liken it to playing an old school video game system like an NES. Like it's fun once in a while to play like Tecmo Bowl. Obviously, Matt
who's in like 25 leagues. So got one like that.
One league is cool like that. But so the Fab system is basically you get usually $100 of fake money in order to bid. And what you do is you bid on players that come up in free agency, and it's a blind bidding system, and the highest bid wins. And when you run out of money, you're not screwed, because in most leagues that you're allowed to make $0 bids. We're actually in a league where you're not allowed to do that, and that's not my preference. But I do, for the most part, you have to use your $100 budget in order to place bids in the waiver wire. So again, most leagues are already there or heading this way. If you're still in an old school reverse order of the standings or reverse draft order waiver wire pickup priority, it definitely is more fair, and you should consider using a Fab system. And if you just Google Fab bidding fantasy football, it will give you a fleshed out explanation. Most of the mainstream sites have what Fab bidding is. And we just feel, again, overall, it's a more fair way and strategic, and adds another level of fun. And after all, fantasy football is about trying to have fun and win a little money while you're at it.
It's also, you want to remove the luck factor here. I fucking hate the waiver system. I'm gonna tell you why. If you want to sack up week 1 of 2018, you see that Philip Lindsay had a big week, and you want to sack up and get that guy on your team. You say, fuck it, I am going to go all in on this player because I believe that he could be. Then you have the choice to do it, or you can wait. You can kind of control your FOB. You can make small bids on players. You can go all in when you want one. So I think the worst is the one where it flips order based on your record, because essentially what that does is it massively rewards people who kind of start slow and then they make a run. I don't like any of it. Use your FOB. Everybody starts on an even keel playing field. You want to go all in on somebody, go all in on somebody. You don't want to go all in, don't.
Yeah, and another thing with the amount of money you should use. Again, I just don't want this to be confused with an auction draft. An auction draft, again, you might have a budget, say, of $200. This is not your startup. This is not your actual draft auction. This is the free agents that we're talking about that are on the waiver wire that you get an additional fake $100 to bid with. Okay. And then most people use $100 system. I've also seen $1,000 system, which eliminates a lot of the ties, and all of the mainstream softwares, and even a lot of the niche ones, no matter which platform you're using, they have Fab options for your waiver wire.
Awesome. All right. So, I mean, those are just basic ones, right? Those are things that everybody should know. Everybody should have already been doing that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about your team playoff structure and 2 changes to rules that every fan, again, we're starting simple, guys, that we will get more complex than this, but we're starting with the basics that every fucking league should be doing right now. Now, in your playoffs, most playoffs get six teams that make it to the playoffs, right? Now, we have our structure. The first 2 teams get a bye week, and then you have your final 4 teams that make the playoffs. So number one rule is the 6 team gets in.
But stop before you even go there, because I probably just talked over you. In a 12-team league, are you of the mindset that half the league should make the playoffs, or should only be 4 teams? What do you think? Should it be 6 or 4 in a 12-team league?
I actually still like 6 teams making the playoffs.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, all right.
Me too. And how about in a 10-team league? Should 6 teams make it, or 4 in a 10-team league?
It's probably 4 in a 10-team league, unfortunately. But what? There should not be a 10-team league. Can we say that?
You know what it is? And I agree with that. I don't play in 10-team leagues. I don't like it, but I don't, and I often thumb my nose at them. But sometimes you can only find 9 people that are committed. And I've been in a situation because I do fantasy basketball also, and it's really hard to find people that are as passionate about as I am with basketball. And sometimes I got 9 other guys, and then I got 2 that are like, all right, I'll do it. And I've added them to the league. I've had my 12-team league, and those 2 guys just screw up the league because they're not active. And sometimes you just can't find those 2 other people, and you don't want to just crowbar them in. So I'd rather have 10 people that are into it than 10 into it and 2 not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So in that specific situation, we'll excuse a 10-person league.
Fine, but yeah, I don't like more than half the league getting in. But
okay,
so in a 10-team, I would go down to 4. But I will say 6 is great because it gets more people interested throughout the whole season.
I agree.
Very good.
I agree.
But here's what happens. There's always one player that gets fucked. Okay, his team started out a little weird, or even worse, he keeps putting up good scores, but just happens to catch the opponent who's crushing that week. So you get one guy that has great point totals.
There's nothing more annoying than being the second highest scorer of the week and getting a loss because you lost to the guy got the most points. Except if you're the guy with the most points, then it's fun to beat that guy.
It is fun, but these 2 rules work off of each other. So the team with the most points that is not one of the top 5 playoff teams gets the number 6 spot. Right? So instead of rewarding it by record or by however Yahoo or your fucking $150 CBS software league orders the playoffs for you, say, no. We're going to do top 5 plus highest score. And the second part of this rule, very, very important. I think more important than the first part almost. Okay, so the most points who didn't make the playoffs, that gets the number 6 spot. But here's the issue. And here's how we solve it. The issue is now, let's say I did pretty well this year in the league, and I've got the number 3 playoff position. Okay? Now I've got number 3. Fucking A, man. I did good this year. I'm feeling good. I'm going to go up against the 6 seed, and I should, in a regular tournament format, 3 versus 6, hey, man, I should be favored heavily. Except I got that motherfucker who's been crushing all season, but losing like bad luck games by record. And so he makes it in by points total. Now, he's got a lot more points than I do. Or even worse, it's that team that was surging at the end of the season because some guys came off the health bench. He took Carlos. He took Kareem Hunt, and Nick Chubb got hurt, and Kareem Hunt came in week 12 and started putting up crazy numbers. Or he picked up Damian Williams last year at the end of the season. He did some great pickups. And now team number 6 is actually one of the best teams in the entire playoffs. I've got the 3rd seed. Now I'm fucked. I'm like, shit, I should have fucking tanked it, came in 4th so I could play number 5 because the 6th. So the other rule proposal, sorry, I talked a lot. The top seed in every round of the playoffs gets to choose their opponent. Alan, can you make an argument why you wouldn't do that?
No, I mean we've been tinkering with playoff formats in most of the leagues, especially the ones I'm in with you, for years. A couple years ago, just to kind of echo what you said, was that in most playoff leagues, the top 6 records get in, tiebreaker being points scored for the year. But what we've done is added, we still allow the first 5 teams that fit through the regular season by win-loss record to make the playoffs, and we use our 6 seed gets a wild card, and that wild card is determined by most points for the season, regardless of your record. You could literally be 0-13 and have the most points outside of the top 5 and make it. I mean, that's an extreme example that would never happen, but it's possible. If you were scored the second most points each week and just kept having unbelievably bad luck. So again, those would be your top 6. But if the 6th seed is this team that has just had bad win-loss luck, like you said, it would be unfair to match them up against a higher seed, where the object of the higher seed is to get the weaker opponents in the early rounds.
And I want to add to this. You, as the higher seed, there should be an advantage. And this is really the crux of this specific rule. I want an advantage for getting the high seed. And
right.
The advantage is I get to choose my opponent.
Yeah, and it also makes for an interesting message board and trash talking fodder. We make it a big event. We say Wednesday by 12 noon, the 3 seed Geeks team must call out his opponent. And then you make the big announcement when you're the 3 seed, and then everyone, the whole league is oohing and eyeing because you just got called out. And then when that lower seed, the perceived weaker opponent, ends up beating the higher seed, then everyone gets a chance to talk trash. It's, I think the real NFL playoffs should be like that. I don't see why it should be predetermined. The team that gets the higher seed should literally be able to pick their opponent. How crazy would that be if the real NFL did that?
Can you imagine? But I mean, it would be a legit. Now, listen, the NFL does a better job of kind of vetting which team is good and which team is bad. But yeah, that would be. I
mean, how many times we've seen it so many times in the NFL? The 6th seed, the Aaron Rodgers Packers, the Eli Manning Giants. They literally just, no one picks them to win the whole thing, and then they go on this amazing run. The Ravens did it with Joe Flacco. They were literally the 6th seed and just go on this crazy run. So I just think it would make for better television if they could pick their opponent. And there's probably no chance it will ever happen, but I mean, who pays the bills for the NFL? It's the fantasy and gambling community. I mean, appease us.
Absolutely. I mean, that would be bananas. But like I said, for your season long league, again, you put a whole season's worth of effort into this league. You make the play. I got the 3rd seed. I mean, it's a freaking, for daily fantasy people, man, we're used to instant satisfaction. Like, a couple hours later. This is a marathon, and then you make the playoffs, and then you get the fucking surging 6th seed. It's just horrible. So now, it adds an element of fun, an element of strategy. You get to choose your opponent. You could look at matchups. I love this. I think it's a must. This is not. We're going to get to some optional rules in a second, but that rule for me is an absolute must. You should not be in a league that doesn't allow the top seed in the play. Now, this is one of those reasons we diss on some of these old school format.
If I'm just saying that, yeah, if you have any questions about anything we've talked about, we didn't cover in the podcast, you can ask us in our DFS Army channels or just on Twitter. We're happy to give you longer explanations and good, solid arguments to go to your. Most commissioners don't want to change rules because they just don't want to be bothered with it. And that's how most people are about everything in life. People don't like change. But sometimes when change is forced upon us, it's usually for the best. You always hear that in your life, change is for the best. How many times in your regular life did something disappointing happen and someone says, well, it's probably for the best? And I know that's just tongue in cheek, but a lot of times it's usually right. So we can arm you with some really good, compelling reasons to go to your league mates and explain why these changes are good. Because if you just go in there hooting and hollering and yelling and screaming at them, I mean, we do that because we're fed up with the way things are sometimes, and we try to force that change up people. But we can give you some real. I mean, hopefully we'll lay them out in the podcast here. But these changes really will make your league better. And if you're in a league that, say for example, a dynasty league, sometimes these things will keep the league together.
100%. So you've just given me a reminder as we're about to go from. Those are what I would call the basic things that every fucking league should have the rules that we just talked about. We're going to get into some more advanced ones, some modern day stuff, because that wasn't even the modern. There's nothing out there about that first 24 minutes worth of what we just discussed. Those are just, how the fuck are you not doing this?
These are things that should have been done 5 years ago in your league. But that's okay. That's okay. We understand if it's not. We understand.
Before we get into that, we got to pay some bills. So I want to mention here. All right. Fantasy Football Geek, myself. We got season long says DFS Army subscribers get access to our complete breakdowns, including our draft kit, a constantly updating set of tiers, rankings, everything you need for your season-long draft. Advice during your draft if you need it. We're there. We have a team chat. Says is answering questions in there. I'm answering questions in there all the time. All of that is regularly available. In season, start decision help, weekly waiver wire help. It's all there for you. DFS Army subscribers get it all. So aside from everything else, this is just bonus. By the way, this season-long NFL content, and we got the GOAT of all season-long, all time right here, as Season Long says, one of the sharpest people I've ever known. The reason he is here is because he's one of the sharpest fantasy football minds I've ever come across. Trust me, I do not fuck around with that stuff. And you're going to start to hear some of his crazy theories for rules for Commissioner Radicals coming up as this thing progresses. You'll understand the depth of knowledge that we're talking about here 24 hours a day. He is obsessed with it. And that's the shit that I love. So not only are we daily fantasy sports, everything, the best in the industry, tools, amazing, everything awesome, but we also have you covered for your season-long fantasy football league. You will crush your friends. That will pay for your membership for years. Just this part. And if you like playing daily fantasy football on FanDuel or DraftKings or any other thing, MMA, NBA, baseball, it's all there. NASCAR. DFS, look at this. See that right there? That guy.
That's a nice hat.
You see that motherfucker at the top of every contest. Look at your contest on DraftKings today. Okay? You're going to see this avatar in first place. That is how we roll. So go to dfsarmy.com. Use promo code GEEK. That will knock your VIP membership. You got to do VIP to get the chat. That will knock your VIP membership down 20%. It is totally worth it. Now let's move on to more radical rules. So a little more now, a little more new, a little more exciting. He's got the super flex up. So let's start with that one. And one of the big things Alan and I talk about a lot is scarcity of position. Now, the 20 years ago version of the Geek and Season Long says figured out something very simple. Wait on QB. I know everybody knows you're supposed to wait on quarterback. What are you, fucking smart? Yeah, that's right. Of course, now you know it. But we figured that shit out 20 years ago. It was very easy to dominate your league. Why?
It wasn't too long ago that people were taking 4 or 5. There was about 6 QBs going in the first round. I remember in 2008 or so, maybe 2009, Brady, Matt Stafford, Drew Brees. These guys were all first round picks.
This is what I'm saying. Oh, everybody. No, they don't. Okay, they didn't know it. Now they do.
Peyton Manning, they were all going in the first round.
Why were we able to be successful waiting on the quarterback selection? Why does everybody do it now? Because of scarcity of position. There are 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. This year, there's probably about 24 really good ones that will score fantasy points at a reasonable clip of 16 to 24 points a week, fairly consistently throughout the season. So, all right, if I take the first guy, will I get 23 average versus the 15th guy who's going to give me 19? Okay. Big shit. All right, because if I take the first running back, he's getting me 29 points a game, and the late one is getting me like 4. So the scarcity of position at quarterback is so diminutive that no matter when you take one, you've got a pretty good one.
Ooh, SAT word, diminutive.
I'm not even sure if I used it right, man. I was hoping you wouldn't highlight it. I'm not 100% sure that was correct. But how do you get rid of that advantage / everybody already knows it, not an advantage anymore, and re-emphasize the quarterback position? The super flex. Now, Alan, tell me about this. What is the super flex, and why should I want it?
Okay, you actually outlined it perfectly, that quarterback is the most important position in all of sports and the least important position in fantasy football. And that doesn't seem like it balances. So what we recommended about 3 years ago to most of our listeners, and now it's becoming more of a mainstream way to play, is adding another flex position to your starting active rosters, but it's called a super flex. And a super flex basically means all offensive positions are available to start. Meaning in a traditional flex on your active roster, you could start a running back, wide receiver, or a tight end. But this Superflex also allows you to start a quarterback. So now, in addition to your regular quarterback that you're starting in your active roster, you have an opportunity to start a second quarterback. So in your typical 12-team league, most teams are going to be starting 2 quarterbacks every week. And you're always going to want to do that because even some of the quarterbacks that are going at the very end of drafts are going undrafted. Someone like Derek Carr, Nick Foles, they're going to score more points than all but 5 or 7 wide receivers every week. Even on a bad week, a bottom tier QB is going to get you 15 points. You would kill for 15 points from your second wide receiver. So what a Superflex does is reinvent and makes the quarterback position more relevant. Most teams are going to roster 2 quarterbacks anyway, and you're never going to have an opportunity to monetize that. For example, how many times have you drafted, say you drafted your quarterback in the 6th round. This year you get Baker Mayfield, say in the 6th or 7th round. And then you pick up another quarterback late in your draft. And let's say Nick Foles, for example, I'll use him again, becomes a superstar. You can do nothing. You can't trade him because everyone already has a quarterback. You can do nothing. So this allows that position to be relevant again. Now, first round of fantasy drafts are going to look a lot different. The elite quarterbacks, the Pat Mahomes, they're definitely going to be first round picks. Maybe even 4 or 5 QBs will go in the first round. Again,
I'm just going to jump in. It changes up the strategy of your draft, the complete dynamic of it. Before I was very confident saying, fuck quarterback, let the suckers take them. And now you really have to start. You have to think about your Mahomes. You have to start thinking about your elite quarterbacks, even in the first round. And you have to worry about scarcity of position because if you wait till the 3rd or 4th round, you end up with fucking what's his name? You end up
Joe
Oh
Flacco.
Oh my God, Marcus Mariota as your guy. Like, oh no, not Mariota.
Right.
So I don't want him. I don't want Joe Flacco. So you don't want those guys, and you have to start 2 quarterbacks essentially because of what you said. They're no matter how bad they are, they're pretty much.
And also, what it allows you to do is trade quarterbacks for elite running backs. Right now, as I said earlier, it doesn't matter if you have a great second quarterback. You can't do anything with that. But now, say you're hurting at running back, you have 3 quarterbacks in the roster, and all 3 are good. You might be able to trade, a mid-tier quarterback, say someone like Ben Roethlisberger for Aaron Jones. I mean, those type of trades go down routinely in Superflex leagues. And what's also great is if your second quarterback is on a bye or gets injured, you don't have to start a quarterback in your Superflex position. You can still start any of the regular positions.
You don't need 3. All right, so let's move on to other cool rules.
Can I just jump in? Superflex also, since it increases the value, it regulates the value of quarterback. That leaves the tight end position still kind of as an afterthought. And I don't know where you're going to transition to, but I think
going right to that. I was going
because this goes hand in hand with tight end premium. So go ahead, you can talk about tight end.
Going right to it. The reverse of quarterback where positional scarcity is not an issue and where the premium level is funny. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, they go hand in hand, tight end premium.
It is tight end premium. So what's the deal with tight ends? Right now, there are maybe 12-ish startable tight ends in the entire NFL. It's kind of a shit position. Unless you get one of the top couple of guys, you kind of like, I don't give a fuck about my tight end. They don't get that much volume. They might catch a tutty here and there, but usually, they're lower scoring and more volatile.
Yeah.
Let me again, I love relating shit to DFS. So I'm going to relate it to DFS. In the Millie Maker contest that is run every week. So in essence, a massive tournament with 150,000 people in it that's run every single week. The number of instances in which a tight end was used in the flex and that wound up in the top lineup or a top 20 lineup in a contest so in other words, a top 0.1% lineup is something, the incident of that working is something in the range of 4% of the time. So in other words,
not a lot.
4% is shockingly low. I mean, again, there's only 3 positions allowed to be used there. You could only have a running back, a wide receiver, or a tight end. And it's an almost impossibility that you use a tight end there and you actually win a massive tournament.
You would think maybe like 10% or even 15% of the time would be, that's what I would have guessed.
Yeah, it's lower than that. It's like 6 or 5 or 4.
Yeah.
It might even be lower. So the reason being that position doesn't score much. So tell us how we can make the tight end more interesting outside of
Yeah, so there's two different ways to make a tight end premium. So again, if you're gonna have super flex, you want to balance everything out. So also, just going back, if you're gonna have super flex, you want to bring up the value of tight ends. Now, originally PPR, regular PPR, was to balance out the value of the wide receivers. So we're always looking to balance. It's a fine scale. We put a little on the side of the scale and it tips this way. Then we put a little back on the side. Sometimes it tips too far the other way. And when you add a super flex, it really tips it a little too far to make the tight ends worth a little bit less. So what we suggest is making the tight ends worth a little more. So in a regular PPR format, we suggest giving the tight ends 1.5 points PPR, meaning every tight end catch is worth 1.5 points versus when a running back or a wide receiver catches 1 point. Now, most leagues, including some of the ones we've promoted today, have that option, tight end premium. Now, we do tight end premium rankings on our site, so it does bring up the value. Like Travis Kelce, for example, who catches 85 passes minimum, is probably just as valuable as any of the top 2 or 3 wide receivers. So just think about
question value-wise. You're right, Kelce, 85 receptions. Zach Ertz.
Last year,
more like 105 receptions.
Last year was an outlier year. He had an insane amount of receptions. You probably have to, a reasonable projection for Zach Ertz is probably 80 receptions.
Okay, so we're not moving Zach Ertz above Travis Kelce in a tight end premium league.
Well, because they're going to move together because they're both tight ends, but we're moving Zach Ertz above some wide receivers.
Can he pass him? No, he's not passing.
Right, but just think about this. So if your typical usable tight end gets you 50 receptions for 600 yards and, say, 7 touchdowns, that's a pretty good tight end. But now his 50 receptions are really you add another 75 receptions. Or it's more like adding another 5 or 6 touchdowns to his total. Because that 25
it makes a major difference in tight end scoring across the board. There's no doubt. Tight end premium is one of again, these past 2 things I think everybody should do. I understand there's a lot of people who don't want to do QB flex or the super flex. They still think they get the advantage. And there are a lot of leagues. Actually, you'll know some local yokel leagues where they're still taking Aaron Rodgers, pick one. I was in one of the leagues where somebody did that just the other year.
I know. You know what it is though? It's not that we want, and yes, we do want to have an advantage, but I think most of your listeners are smart listeners and they want to make the fantasy more challenging. They want to make the game more fun. And I think that Superflex does that. That doesn't take away that advantage. It just adds another layer of strategy and it improves us. It causes us to think differently. If you're in a dynasty league that's Superflex, then you already know in a traditional dynasty league, all of the rookie running backs and receivers go. Now you put the rookie quarterbacks into the first round, and it would do the same for your with the tight ends as well. Tight end premium, tight ends will go in the first round of your redraft leagues.
100%. All right, so let's move on to a little bit more. Again, now we're going to get a little more silly with some of these rule changes. And the first one I'm going to talk about is one that comes from some of the high-stake leagues that you and I have discussed or been involved with. I don't want to name the leagues. They're not sponsoring the show. So
okay.
But some of the high-stakes leagues, and one of them is the third-round reversal. Now, explain to me what a third-round reversal is and why, again, if you have flexible league settings, which not everybody does, not your $150 CBS league, I ain't got that shit. But if you have flexible settings, why is a third-round reversal a fair and sharp way to approach your fantasy draft? And how does it eliminate the luck factor of the bullshit reasoning why whoever gets whatever pick in the first fucking round they get? And tie that in as well for me with a lottery or a choose your pick in the first round approach rather than just picking numbers out of a hat. So let's talk
Okay.
about those two things.
Well, these are
yeah, because I think they're tied together. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, they're two separate things, but they definitely go hand in hand. So you mentioned third round reversal. So in a traditional snake format draft, you pick 1 through 12, 12 through 1, 1 through 12, 12 through 1, and so on and so forth. In third round reversal, we do it a little bit differently. In round 1, we still pick 1 through 12. In round 2, we still pick 12 through 1. Now we reverse in the third round, where normally you would pick 1 through 12 in the third round. You're now picking 12 through 1 again. So to give you that in overall pick and to try to keep it simple.
Yeah, I mean, break it down because even I didn't understand what.
Okay, all right, no, that's fair. That's fair. So
overall, which picks do I end up with?
In the third round, we just reverse the order and then we continue with a regular snake. So if you have pick 12 in a 12-team league, you're picking 12 and 13th. You follow so far? Okay. So then normally, if you're picking from the last spot, you would have the 36th pick. But in third round reversal, you're actually going to get pick 25. So if you have the last spot, pick 12, you pick 12, 13, and 25. And the reason is that in most years balances out the advantage that the players that get, by luck of the draw, a top overall pick have. So that play.
Just to be clear, let me clarify this, because again, it gets confusing. If I was the number 1 pick on a normal season,
and like in this year, you're taking, say, Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I got Saquon Barkley number 1. I've got 24 overall as my second pick. Hey, I got lucky.
But normally you would have 20. If you pick Barkley, not only would you have pick 24, you would have pick 25.
5 as well, right?
We're not allowing that. In the third round, we're flipping the draft upside down, and you're going to have to wait to the end of the third round to pick.
36 and 37, not 25 and 40.
Not 24 and 25. Originally, if it was traditional snake, if you picked 1, you would have 24 and 25. You'd have the last pick of the second and the first pick of the third. But in third round reversal, and the reason we do that again is to balance out the advantage that somebody has by picking 1 overall. And how this rule came about, I'll give you a little bit of history on this rule. It's called the LaDainian Tomlinson rule. And for those who've been playing fantasy football for about 15 years, LaDainian Tomlinson, probably one of the best running backs of all time, literally won you the league. So if you had pick 1.1, I mean, he was scoring like upwards of like 30, 40 touchdowns in the league in a season.
His era was an era where there weren't like 4 guys who were all pass catching, running, do it all guy. He was like the only guy, right?
But even by today's standards, he was getting 100 catches. He was getting 1,600 yards. It was just, you had no chance against the player that had LaDainian Tomlinson. He could have a poor draft and still just dominate. So what sharper leagues did, what the rule they implemented was third round reversal. If you pick LaDainian Tomlinson, number 1 overall, you didn't get the highest pick in the third round. You had to wait till the end of the third round to pick. Hopefully that's clear. But if you map it out, you'll see. It basically, the simplest way to explain it is reverse the order of the third round and then continue on with the normal snake draft.
Now, tie that in for me, because now if you combine that rule with the ability, let's say, rather than, most leagues start with some sort of either randomized or organized process of selecting draft orders, right? And a lot of times we just throw it in a randomizer or something like that. So one rule that has been added a lot, and I think is a very sharp approach to the game as well, is to say, all right, we'll still do the random selection, but from there, instead of that being your actual draft order, that will be your turn to select what spot in the draft you want. And when you combine these two things, so now you have to think about all of these different possibilities. All right, well, I might get randomly selected 4, but I might think, you know what? I really like 12, 13, because instead of having to wait all the way to 36, 37, I'm not sure if I did that math right, but nonetheless, I get 12, 13, 25. So I'll have 3 picks within the first 25, whereas normally, the number 1 guy is going to only have 2 picks, 1 and 24, and then he's going to have to wait till 36. So you can make a lot of calculations if you're allowed to select your spot in the draft order. You also might know your league. And so you might say, well, this guy's a fucking Giants fan, or this guy's a fucking, whatever. And, he's taking that. So I can kind of like wait until 5. You can do some little sneaky things on that first round, knowing your league. So I really like the ability rather than just selecting draft order based on a random number. The random allows you to pick your spot.
Yeah. So what this rule is called is draft priority order. So when you do your random drafting, when you do your random order picking out of the hat, so to speak, I'm doing air quotes, that number that you draw is not your draft position, rather than the order in which you get to pick. So if the geek picks draft priority 1, he doesn't necessarily get the first overall pick. He just gets to pick his draft slot first. If I draw number 5, it means that I will be the 5th person to select my draft position. And let's just say that the first 4 players all picked 1 through 4. I don't have to take 5. I could take any position 5 through 12. So having that freedom to pick your draft order based on a draft priority order drafting, we think is a really fun way. And again, these are not just fair rules that we like they also create a sense of community. And I know that sounds a little hokey, but those are the type of things that keep leagues together for longer amount of times. And ultimately, that's what you want to do. One of the most difficult things is finding a new person for your league that everyone's comfortable with, and just doing that search, and then another person that you have to coordinate draft date and times with. So anything you can do to engage the league and keep them having fun, chat groups, drafting random priority order. These are good things for the long-term health of your league.
I mean, I hate to say it, but and again, another +1 for the Sleeper app, where these new platforms for fantasy football have much better chat functionality than anything we've seen in the past. And that does, a lot of us are in season-long leagues with our friends that we don't really have a lot of reason to keep in touch with otherwise. I mean, fuck, I'd probably never speak to you if we weren't talking fantasy football. Like,
oh, I'm offended. I'm hurt.
No, but you know how it goes, man. You get busy, and then
life happens.
Have a reason to keep in touch with your friends. So that's what that league is about. And the more social interaction that you can get going in your league, the more fun the league is. If you could talk more shit, awesome. So let's. I love it, and I totally agree. I don't understand. There are no downsides to a lot of these rules.
I have a couple. So, do you want me to introduce a couple rules that I may have mentioned them to you off air, but a couple things, and you can just yes or no these. If you want to give an explanation, you can.
Yeah, I mean, we could go into that. We're getting now. That's right. We got past what I think are universal. Everybody should do this stuff. So you've done some very sort of innovative rules in some leagues that we've been in together, and that's what I want to get into now in the final part of this breakdown. So give me some rules for radicals at this point. Some like crazy fucking approaches for commissioners. Some shit that you could try.
All right,
we've tried that didn't work, and you know what I'm talking about. There have been some ideas like this that kind of like I didn't like it.
Well, that's again, I think subjective, because all right. So what we're talking about is what we did was a couple years ago. We took out kicker, we took out defense. I don't think that's overly innovative. We don't like playing with kicker and defense, and if you like playing kicker defense, I have no problem with that. It's that I don't like it. I'm in so many leagues, and I personally don't like the grind of cycling through kickers, cycling through defenses, and defensive matchups are strategic. I get it. It's a great part of fantasy. I just personally prefer no. But what we did add was the head coach position. A couple of years ago, we draft head coaches, and you could draft Bill Belichick. You could draft Mike Tomlin. And you get points. How our specific point structure was, you were able to get 5 points, just 5 points for a win. You would get 10 points for a double-digit win. So, for example, if you have Bill Belichick and the Patriots win by 11 points, you would get 10 fantasy points. Conversely, if you lose, say you pick someone in a matchup, say you have Mike Tomlin and the Steelers lose, you would get a -5 points. And if you lost by double-digit points, we did a -7. So you can structure that any way you want. And sometimes people are fighting over these head coaches, drafting them. Bill Belichick goes in a certain round. Adam Gase gets drafted. That's just one way. Now, we experimented with that.
By the way,
and
who the fuck is taking Adam Gase?
Right. Well, listen, if the Jets are playing a doormat and they're favored by 7 or favored by 6, it may not be a bad play.
That for me, I just want to say that was not my favorite.
Right, and we don't use it anymore, but we did use it. It's just one suggestion. Another thing that we did was we used something called the captain rule. Is this what you were talking about?
Yeah, captain rule.
Okay, so what we did was each week a team would have to designate a captain, and I put captain in quotes on the screen here because your captain would have to be either a running back, tight end, or a wide receiver.
Could not be a quarterback.
Could not be a quarterback in our league format. So each week your captain would score double fantasy points. So if your captain was Christian McCaffrey and he scored 20 fantasy points, he would actually get 40 points.
And you couldn't choose the same captain 2 weeks in a row.
Correct.
So there was a strategy to that approach where you had to look at the matchup of one guy versus another. And
the reason that I put the captain rule in is because in the same year we introduced Superflex. So everyone was saying, oh, I'm just taking a quarterback in the first round. But what the captain rule did was put in play some of these superstars in the first round that you could use as captains. Again, those two rules kind of go hand in hand. So people were scrapping over which captain should I use, and sometimes, a lot of times, your captain was playing on Monday night and you were down by 38 points. And normally, if you're down by 38 points and you have to say, Juju Smith-Schuster going, you're like, all right, I pretty much lost. But when you have him as a captain, and all you need is about 19 fantasy points from Juju, you're in play. And those fantasy points would double, and it was like a pinball machine. So the weekly picking a captain was a really fun ad. It was a crazy rule, and we used it, and some people loved it. Some people didn't love it. And
I'll give the negative to the captain spot because that was not a –
You got crushed by the captain rule. You always seem to pick the wrong captain.
I didn't like the captain rule, and I'm going to tell you a couple of reasons why.
Yeah, why? I was curious why. Because it seems to –
my number one reason is if I was a commissioner, it's just too fucking hard to record that shit every week. Like, it requires a manual process at the end. And also, as you're playing the game, you don't fully know who your opponent's captain is, or you have to ask. It's not showing on.
Wait a second. I was pretty vocal, and I made a whole Google spreadsheet.
We knew. In fairness, we knew.
I made a Google spreadsheet and I put the captains in there and I calculated the points. So yes, the first thing you said, that it does take a lot of maintenance. Hopefully one day some of these softwares will allow you to do that when it becomes more popular. But having the captain designation, it definitely was labor intensive for the commissioner because you have to go in and change the weekly scores.
Too labor intensive. I like to see the scoring happening live. So I like it conceptually, but I would really need the software itself to not just be able to allow you to designate the captain, but have it show with like a little captain mark next to it. So, but in general, it's a cool rule. It's innovative. I would definitely not say that is a necessary rule.
No, none of these are necessary that we're into now.
The stuff is necessary. Like if you're not doing most of the things that we talked about up until the last few, the radical ones. Yeah. Now, I mean, some basic things to make your league not horrible.
Well, what's radical today is mainstream tomorrow, man. There was a time where people thought, DFS was radical. The gambling was radical. People thought pot was radical 30 years ago. There was a time where drinking alcohol was radical. What's radical today is mainstream tomorrow. So that's, I caution you with saying radical because these could be the things of tomorrow.
Today. Listen, radical could mean awesome. Radical.
That's true.
Remember rad. So,
want me to?
Do we have any more?
Yeah. So a couple of things. These are yes or no's. Oops, sorry, I put back the wrong Chiron.
So great idea. I love that. Okay.
Really all right.
Yes. Good.
You want me to explain it, and then you can?
Yes, I like.
Okay, so what I put up for those watching on video and for those listening, I put up match the trade. Now, how many times have you seen a trade go down in your league, and you thought to yourself, I would have given more than that, or a trade you're part of, somebody else says, oh, I would have given you way more than that. hey, thanks. I mean, I've only had AJ Green up on the block for 3 weeks. Nobody made me an offer. So match the trade rule. Now, this is going to put the league on complete tilt, but it's a good rule. We haven't yet implemented it because we're trying to figure out how, but I think I figured out the way. When a trade goes up on the board, all the other teams have less. We could pick a time, let's say 24 hours, to send offers to the two teams that have the trade up on the board and match the trade. And what I mean by that, say, let's use AJ Green because he's probably going to be out for a couple weeks, and somebody trades AJ Green for a lesser perceived player. Let's say Marvin Jones and Lamar Miller. So now our trade up on the board is AJ Green for Marvin Jones, Lamar Miller. All the owners in the league can match that trade and offer a better trade to the owners. And the owners could accept that trade or reject that trade. So now it really answers the question, hey, I would have given more for that trade, and it allows you to do it.
It also goes to remove something that's, I think, annoying about leagues, which is just commissioner veto, or situations where every team is allowed to veto trades. And, there's a lot of leagues that you might be in where everybody's like, fuck you, no matter what the trade is, veto that shit because fuck you, I don't like you. So, I mean,
no trade should be vetoed unless it's egregious.
Well, but yes, should be. But if you allow the league to veto trades, they're like, fuck that trade.
Yeah, I veto. If you're allowing me to veto, I veto it no matter what, because I don't want anyone getting better. I'm a total, I want to.
Like, fuck that guy. He's my opponent. I don't want him getting better. So this eliminates that. You could say, all right, now I didn't love your example because all those players seem kind of shitty. He's injured. But let's take a real, like, some shit that really goes down in leagues, all right? Where the moron in your league, in your 1 QB league, has Nick Chubb on his team, but he's got a couple other running backs too. He's got Dalvin Cook, and he's got Philip Lindsay's doing really well, and he's got a lot of running backs. He's got Nick Chubb, who's having a fucking great year, but he's not in love with his quarterback. He's got Phillip Rivers up there, so somebody offers him Andrew Luck for Nick Chubb. And he's like, okay, I'll do that trade, right?
Right. And we all know that's a bad trade because you're giving it because of position.
Player in luck, but I mean, like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? I'll give you a quarterback, Cam Newton. I'll give you Cam Newton and 2 other guys. What are you, crazy? So, like, instead of like that guy's like, I don't know. So at that point, the rest of the league can come in and bid on this trade. So it also gives you incentive. Now you have to put in some. I really love this rule. You have to put.
Yeah, no.
If you feel like you got like this amazing trade and you.
What it does is it forces you to really, if you want a player, to pay up, and it keeps the league. Basically, it's similar to like how our government is supposed to be set up with checks and balances. This is a check and balance on the trade market of your league. I want
to point out, this is not an idea that is known anywhere. This is our rule that we actually concept. We just came up with this shit.
We came up with this while we were very high.
Yeah, we were discussing this podcast and what we were going to talk about, and it was like, that would be a fucking awesome role. And it also stems from watching. Basically, it stems from being in a league where one of the dumbest trades in history went down, and somebody like did something so stupid, and you're like,
I would have. Well, we've all experienced that. We've all said, hey, I would have given more for that, or we've all been on the trade and someone says, hey, I would have given you more for that. So this again allows you to push that trade up into the middle. Okay, the trade's out there, everybody. Do you want to beat it?
I think this rule would inspire more trades because you're less afraid of getting ripped off. Right now, I'm afraid. A lot of people are scared to pull the trigger. I'm scared to pull the trigger. I'm like, is this motherfucker ripping me off? I don't even know.
But if you're scared to pull the trigger on a trade, that means it's a good trade. When you've like, oh, I can't wait for this trade to go through, it's a bad trade. Yeah. It's the ones where you're scared that are the good trades.
But a lot of times people are just generally scared to pull the trigger. So with this rule in place, even if you make kind of a bad trade, you're going to get somebody like, what are you, stupid? Why are you trading DJ Moore for fucking Travis Kelce in a first-round draft? What the fuck?
Yeah, that's more like dynasty you're talking, but yeah, sure. So As we're approaching, do you have anything more to say on Match the Trade? If anyone else has any questions on it, we can answer them in the chat, because I have 2 other quick ones I want to buzz by before we wrap up the hour. Okay, here's just a simple question. Should the commissioner get paid?
I say no.
Okay, so they should be doing it out of the goodness of their heart.
Yeah, I believe in a friends league, a commissioner should not. That's just
okay. If there's a good commissioner, meaning like he's adapting rule changes, he or she is.
Let me put this out there, and let me give a part to my answer. Commissioner should not get paid in a friends and family league, but if you're running a league not with friends and family, but rather just fantasy football enthusiasts who are playing for big money. So, like, when there's more money on the line and is fantasy football enthusiasts not your buddies, then I don't have a problem with a commissioner taking some sort of a vigorish, be it in the
depending on what they're doing. And if it's a high stakes league, the commissioner should not be in the league. The commissioner should be outside the league. I know that sounds crazy. Wait, a commissioner but if you're talking about like a super high stakes league, or just, the most of the high stakes leagues I'm in that are, from various softwares have a third party commissioner, because you just can't have someone in the league being commissioner. But yeah. But for your friends and family league, giving a tip is okay, but not mandatory. That's how I think. Now, here's another one. If someone goes 13-0, should there be an extra bonus given? Someone goes 13-0 in the regular season. Should everyone have to give that person, say in your typical $50 to $100 entry league, if the champion goes 13-0 entering the playoffs, should they get an extra $10 from each person?
I'm fine with it, but I will tell you this. In all of my years of playing fantasy football,
it's impossible to do, right?
I have never seen that. So
I've heard about it. I've heard people claim it on Twitter. I've heard people claim it on a message board, but I've never seen it.
I have never seen anything even close to that. I don't think I've even seen a 12-1 team.
I have not either. And then certainly not a 16-0, or it would be, I guess it would be.
And then run all the way to the
50. It would be. Right, it would be a 15-0 because you'd get a bye in the first week after your 13-0 season.
Yeah, I've never seen it. So I don't think that's an important thing. I don't think that
it was just for fun at the end.
For fun. All right, we're going to call it right there. Guys, reminder again, NFL season's coming. Your fantasy draft is coming. You want our draft kit. You want to ask Season Long Says questions about your draft. Who should I take? Blah, blah, all that good stuff. You want to have his full set of rankings, player rankings by position,
dynasty,
ADP, dynasty, rookie rank. It's all there. Mine too. I'm not even on the league with this dude, but my shit's there too. If you want to follow the geek.
I looked at your rankings, dude. Your rankings are really tight this year. You have some really sharp rankings, not based on projections, based on what's going on in the news. Because sometimes people's, a player's projections are not going to match up with where you would actually take them in the draft. I like how you rank the players this year. You
will not see my rankings or Season Long Says rankings that look like some fucking generic shit you're going to find on CBS, on NBC, on ESPN. I try, at the very least, that they're going to be really fucking different. Now, there's going to be bold calls. This isn't called bold calls for no reason. It's going to be bold calls in there. We will help you win your league. That's what we do. And if you it's like playing the chalk in a tournament on DFS. If you play the chalk, you ain't winning this fucking thing. But if you take a couple chances, if you go against the grain, if you take a player that is not highly thought of in the general community, but highly thought of in the sharp community, and it works out, that's going to win you your league. So get signed up for DFSArmy.com. As a VIP member, use promo code GEEK. You'll get 20% off your VIP subscription. You get every fucking DFS sport covered by the best players in the industry. That's what we do on the daily fantasy side. You have the top-ranked guys, people who will not help you elsewhere. Trust me, there aren't other sites where the number 2 ranked player at a sport is going to help you. They don't do that. That's what we do in DFS Army. That's why you see these faces on top of every DraftKings and FanDuel tournament, because our members are winning them, not our staff, our members, because the tools, we're leveling the playing field. DFS Joes, DFS Pros, we're going to help you on your season-long league too. That's what it is. We love fantasy football. I don't do this because I have to. I love this shit. Says isn't here because it's his job. He's here because he fucking loves fantasy football. He's obsessed with it, not just this season, year round. So that's the kind of advice you're getting. Go on to it. Check it out. Check out what's your Twitter, man?
It's at Alan Seslowski, and I will put that in the show notes. AlanSeslowsky at Alan Seslowski. And you could also
for all these years I can't spell Seslowski. Like
that's all right. You'll find it. You'll find it.
Fucking season long says. What do you think?
All right. I will do it. I will
right.
change it.
I'm at Football Geek. You can tweet us. You can at me. You can.
You are an F Football Geek.
Yes, at F Football Geek. And like I said, you can at me on Twitter. You can tell me your fucking takes suck and your commissioner ideas are shit. Whatever you want to do, please don't do that though. I like positivity in my life. Don't bring me negativity. What the fuck? So you can tell me you curse too much. I once had somebody tell me that you swear too much and it's bothering me. And I said to them, dude, it's a fucking gambling website. You're a degenerate gambler and you're worried about my cursing? What?
People have different quirks, man.
I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I mean, listen, be you. Be you.
Be me. You don't like it? Don't listen. But that's going to be it for this one. Says, I appreciate you being on here. We will be back with more. All right, let me finish more. We've already done 6 or 7 bold call podcasts this season. Every position has been broken down: running back, wide receiver, quarterback. We've talked about best ball strategies. We love best ball leagues. We've gone over commissioner rules. I can't even remember what the fuck we've gone over. We've done it all, and we continue to do them as we approach the season. There will be a couple more, I'm sure. So subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, I should have said this at the beginning. Subscribe to the channel if you want to get a notification for when the next video comes out. If you're listening to this on Podbean or whatever podcast, iTunes, whatever it is, click subscribe, click like. Let us know that you're watching these videos, that you like them. Drop a comment somewhere. Ask us a question. We always get back to you. We love you guys. We love everybody that listens to this shit. We love people who love fantasy football. That is what we love. So we are a community. We're trying to help each other. Let's do this thing. Crush your leagues. And we will see you next time.
All right. Bye for now.